The rain had stopped just before dawn. The forest still smelled of wet soil and pine, and a mist hovered above the narrow dirt road. A dark SUV pulled to a stop, its tires crunching softly against the gravel. Inside sat Eleanor Gray, a 63-year-old widow whose eyes carried both warmth and fatigue, the kind that comes from a lifetime of giving. Her son David sat beside her, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the windshield. "Mom," he began, his voice low and uncertain. "We've talked about this. You said you needed peace, space. This cabin will give you that." Eleanor looked out the window. Through the fog, she could see it, a small wooden cabin surrounded by tall pines, far from any town. It looked lonely, forgotten. "David," she said quietly, "this place looks abandoned." "It's not," he replied quickly, avoiding her eyes. "You'll love it. There's a lake nearby. It's quiet here. You can finally rest." He stepped out, unloaded her single suitcase and placed it on the porch. Then, without another word, he got back in the car. The engine started. The gravel crunched again. And before Eleanor could say another word, he was gone. She stood there for a long time, staring at the empty road. Her heart didn't break, not fully. It simply hardened a little more. That night, she lit a candle and explored the cabin. Dusty shelves, broken windows, a few old photographs of strangers long gone. The silence was heavy, but familiar. She had lived with silence for years, ever since her husband's death. On the third day, she found something strange. An old wooden box buried behind the cabin, sealed with rope. Inside were faded letters, a rusted compass, and a journal belonging to a woman named Margaret Finch, dated 1943. The entries spoke of loss, betrayal, and survival. Margaret had been abandoned by her own family in the same woods during the war, but she had built a life there. A garden, a shelter, a purpose. Eleanor felt something awaken inside her. She began clearing the weeds around the cabin, planting flowers. She fixed the door, she gathered firewood. Every day her hands, wrinkled and worn, rebuilt what her son had left to die. And slowly, she found peace. Months passed. Eleanor's once quiet cabin became a home, not just for her, but for others. Hikers who lost their way found refuge there. A young woman running from an abusive marriage stayed for a week. A boy who had run away from foster care found warmth and food. Eleanor never turned anyone away. They began to call her the mother of the woods. She didn't own much, but what she had, she gave. Every lost soul that crossed her path reminded her that maybe, just maybe, she had been brought here for a reason. A year later, David returned. His life had fallen apart. His marriage ended, his business collapsed, and guilt haunted him every night. He came looking for his mother, expecting to find a ruin or a grave. But what he found left him speechless. The cabin stood strong and beautiful, surrounded by a lush garden. Laughter and warmth poured from within. Eleanor was sitting on the porch, surrounded by people, strangers who had become family.
"Mom?" he whispered. She looked at him, calm and steady. "Hello, David." Tears filled his eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Eleanor smiled faintly. "You didn't need to know. Sometimes being lost is how we find ourselves." He fell to his knees, overcome with guilt and relief. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "I forgive you," she said softly, "but I won't go back. This is my home now." And as the sun set behind the trees, David realized that the woman he had left to vanish had instead learned to live. He had abandoned her in the woods, but she left him shocked forever.